You own a square body, but you would like to make it just a little bit cooler. And what's cooler than a manual transmission in a square body? Fortunately, all square bodies were offered with a manual transmission, so swapping them over if you have an automatic is actually fairly easy to do. So, just some pointers here if you've never done it. To start off, there was really only one major difference between manual transmissions and square bodies, and that is the clutch linkage. So from 1973, which is what this truck is, first year square body, to 1984, they utilized a manual linkage instead of a hydraulic linkage. So from 85 up, it went to hydraulic. So if we're looking at this one, it has a manual linkage. These are both 4-on-the-floor trucks. And if you actually look at the clutch pedal, it has an actual rod that connects to the clutch pedal that goes through the floorboard that operates your clutch. So if you're looking here, there's actually a bracket on the frame that holds what I call the Z bar. So that linkage hits here and manually presses your clutch in on that stuff right there. So if you were gonna use this type of linkage, it really just depends on what kind of donor you can find. You would need the clutch pedal assembly, you would need the linkage, and the main thing a lot of people may forget is that you need that bracket on top of the frame rail right there. Now, for an automatic, there's a bracket there, but you gotta cut the rivets off and then bolt that bracket on. But if we get into 85 and newer, which is the more desirable swap option, especially in my opinion, you move over to a hydraulic linkage setup. So this has the bracket on the washer pump for the clutch master cylinder. Clutch master cylinder bolts up and you have a line running to your hydraulic assisted clutch transmission, or hydraulic is what you'd say. So if you look at the pedal setup here, you don't have no rod or whatever, but instead it goes directly through the firewall and uses a clutch linkage. Now, this is a square body pedal assembly out of a manual transmission. If you've never seen one, this is a hydraulic setup. So instead of a rod coming down, this is where you would bolt up your slave cylinder, and this bolt would bolt to your firewall, and this bolts up. Now, if you look at this bolt or the setup here, these two bolts right here, so your steering column actually sits right here, and the main bolts holding on is the bolts coming through the firewall that hold your master cylinder, brake booster, or in this case a hydro boost setup on. So if we look at this one, if you're looking at a junkyard truck and want to pull it off, you would have to pull the bolts. This one doesn't have power brakes, but you would have to pull the bolts here, drop the column down, then pull the pedals out. Actually, getting that pedal assembly out can prove to be kind of frustrating. I've done quite a few, and it's always kind of been a pain in the butt. But these are actually kind of hard to come by, probably because of me. But that's all right. They can still be found in junkyards, and they're going to be cheaper if you do find them in a junkyard, because people on Facebook pages and stuff that resell these are usually asking anywhere from $150. I've seen them all the way up to $400. But I believe there is some aftermarket options available for a pedal assembly. I haven't really looked into that. You can find these, and that's, it was meant to go there. So in my opinion, that's the way to go. So if we're talking about transmission options, obviously you can find the 4-speed manual. Some trucks came with a 3-speed, but the most common truck or one you're going to find in a square body is a 4-speed manual. They never offered a 5-speed in a square body, but you can put NV 4500, NV 3500 out of a OBS truck in square bodies. I've done that, and that's a great upgrade. I might do another series on how you go about making that work. But if you're looking for putting a standard transmission in, once you get over the hurdle of putting your pedals in, GM kind of did us a favor, and that is giving us a template to go off of. This is kind of hard to see because it's black, but if you look right here where the slave cylinder would come out, there's actually 3 dimples already there, and that's going to mark the exact spot that you need to drill out to allow your master cylinder to come out of the firewall. You can get another view of the linkage assembly you would need for a manual linkage setup. Now, something else GM also did us a solid on is in the early trucks, and all four-wheel drives, I believe, they have this removable cover right here that just bolts to the floorboard. If you've never pulled your carpet up in a four-wheel drive, you can look up from the bottom and make sure you got these bolt holes here. But this whole plate would lift off, and there's also a dimple cut right where you would need to cut for a 4-speed to come out. Now, if you have a two-wheel drive truck that's in the 80s, that's a lot of times is not removable. So the last thing is the steering column. So when you put a manual transmission in, obviously you're not going to need this shifter anymore. So most people, not me, knock that pin out and just pull that thing off, and that's fine. You can put a manual column in there if you want a cleaner look, but really the only difference is on the outside here is just going to be that little bump there. So, but something to keep in mind, this truck, it has to be in park for it to start. So if you put everything together and you just can't figure it out, that might be your problem.